So there should be down the bottom, Roy, a little screen button for you now, where it's got mic, camera.
Okay. It says I need to restart my go-to meeting. So I might drop off, but I'll come straight back.
Okay, no problems.
Difficult.
Yep. Sorry guys, technical problems. Hopefully it won't be long.
Okay. I think you're going to make me a presenter again. Sorry, Lauren.
Oh, good. Let me try. Should all be good now, Roy.
Roy, you're on mute.
There's 2 Roys on my screen. Hang on. He's just dropped off. Where'd he go? Sorry, guys. Apologies, everyone. I'm not sure what's going on with Roy's internet.
Apologies, team. I'll also follow up with Roy now, see what's going on, and I'll get an update soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Rebecca.
Okay. I think it's come back.
Okay. I will try again and make you presenter.
Yeah, last time it just crashed it on me. Oh, there we go. Share.
Oh,
Sometimes Mac
hooray.
does not play well. Okay. I do apologise, everyone, for that.
All good. Over to you, Roy.
You know, bit of technology. So good morning, good afternoon to everyone that's on the call today. Basically, my name's Roy Milan. I'm the Chief Executive of the Definitiv Group, and I'm going to go through in a very short time today some of the highlights that Definitiv can offer the business. So just to get a snapshot of where we sit as a product, medium to enterprise businesses is usually where there's complexities, whether it's construction, mining, oil and gas, right down to retail manufacturing. We've got pretty much every industry under the sun. And it is the one platform that we cater for all our clients. And you'll see when I go through the presentation, it's very feature rich, and not everything will be applicable to every organization. And even so, it's not applicable to every organization when it comes to its maturity and culture that it might have. So, you know, there's parts of a journey that people will go upon. So I thought I would start with the web today, and from there go into some of the reporting, the analytics, how we deal with the award side of things, just to frame you into that perception of what I guess a super user could do and see through the product. So logging in, all our clients are branded to suit themselves. Again, it's all about that user experience to ensure that, you know, especially as the Y generations is coming through the workforce, that the software is a clean, easy, user-friendly format. And that doesn't matter if it's from the baby boomers down to the Gen Z. You know, the whole goal is you only see what's applicable to your role and duties in the organization. And obviously, if you've got higher positions, like I'm logged in as a, let's call it a payroll manager today, I will see different permissions and different functionalities in the product. So at the minute the employee logs into the system, you will see things on the dashboard taking you straight to a timesheet, applying for leave, getting your pay slips, what we call the work schedule. So they're more for your fixed full-timers and part-timers, where they might have a set schedule working Monday to Friday, or they might have a 2-in-1 swing, 8 and 6, whatever it might be. We also have rostering in the system. And again, that's dependent on the organization, whether they have work schedules rostering, or they only do timesheets, or a combination of those hybrids. So again, it's all applicable down to the end user. You also see to the right-hand side the employee's leave history. So it's showing you what your history looks like as an employee in the organization. And the reason we do that, it's all about changing that mentality of HR policing bad habits after the fact. So for example, an interesting stat we ran recently, just in October last year, was the most common day off of personal leave was Tuesdays. It was Y generations and it was males that accounted for that personal leave. So again, when you look at the statistics in your own businesses and cultures, whether you're dominant males or females, or you know, a balance of those two, it's also interesting when you dive into those stats to see that actually 68% of all personal leave is taken by males. So if you're looking at your recruitment and workforce planning, again, especially the people in HR, it's all about the analytics and data that you now can see, and you can start shifting those cultures. You know, we try to tell you with Definitiv as a platform, absolutely you will automate and streamline your payroll processing and some of your HR compliance and governance. But the goal is we'll also try to save you that 1 to 2% of your labor costs, because now you can see data that you haven't seen before. So how we do that is I'm actually going to jump straight into the admin section, so you get the fundamentals of how it all comes together before I jump into, say, the rostering. So in our structures, Definitiv allows for job costing. So whether you're costing to a project or to a work order, or to project and work order, to a location, department, or a role, again, there's multiple dimensions available within inside Definitiv and multiple layers within inside each one of those dimensions. So in this particular case, I've got a BHP job up here. The journal, the GL code for the ERP that's in play just happens to be 67383. So again, it's very simple, so it knows how to cost it back to the journal. Now, the purpose of employees job costing their time or being rostered to the jobs that they're assigned to is Definitiv will automate the job costing for you. So we are talking the wages, the super, the payroll tax, the work cover, leave provisions, leave movement. If you've got construction long service leave, it's the real cost will be charged to those jobs automatically for you. Now, inside each job, you can have complexity. So you might say to work on the BHP job, if you're a nurse, you've got to have a working with children's check. If you all roles have to have a police check, and if you're a barista, you have to have a forklift check. So where some of these, I guess, features come from is, again, coming back down to your rostering. So you might be an electrician in your organization and you have to have an electrical license to be a qualified electrician. However, for you to work on the BHP job, you might have to have a high voltage license to work on that particular plant or at that particular job. So again, the system has the ability to check if you're compliant in your role, check to see if you're compliant in your project, or both together. So again, when you come to rostering, as you're rostering people, it's also doing those real-time checks to make sure your roster is compliant before you hit publish to those employees. Now, we say with approvals, you know, you commonly get in the bigger organizations what we call project managers, but let's call it a different level of approval structures. So for example, the traditional approval structure by default is let's follow the line manager. So whoever sits above you in the org chart will be that line manager that for your approvals. But in some cases, let's say if anyone charges to the BHP job, it might go to your direct supervisor first for approval, but then it also goes, say, to a project manager. So everything in our product is done inside here without going back to the need of the vendor or us as a technology provider to make those simple basic changes to suit your organization requirements. So coming off the projects and the different locations, departments, you can have multiple levels. So you could say, you can see here, I've got Australia as my highest level, I've got Victoria, and then I break it down into regions. Now I might say Birdwood East might belong to Bendigo. So again, I can have a multiple level structure with multiple GL codes. So again, the flexibility is all there stock standard in the product. We also have things like plant and equipment as an additional module. So if you're an organization that's got to book time to an asset, whether it's an excavator, whether it's a vehicle, whether it's a bobcat, whether it's a whippersnipper, and you've got to track that time against that application, this is where you integrate this back to the ERP. So then people or employees can book their time for the job that they worked on, but also book time or units or quantities against plant and equipment. So then again, in some of our organizations and clients, that drives their scheduling, their maintenance, their repair jobs in their ERPs, and also could potentially drive your charge out rates if you're an organization, say in a labor hire kind of space. So again, so many different ways you can structure Definitiv to suit the organization. But where the brains of the operation happens in Definitiv is what we call the award policy or the award engine. So it's not to get too hung up on the word award, it is, let's call it payroll rules. So when we take on any client, every organization has unique requirements of how they pay people. Now, you might be underpinned by the clerical award, the SHADS awards, you might have an enterprise agreement, you've got a common law contract. That's all okay. You can have as many as you need to, again, suit the organization requirements. But this is where Definitiv is always right or it's always wrong. So part of the feature set in Definitiv as a product as a whole is we are what we call date-driven. So at any point in time, we know what the snapshot of the system look like on any given date of the week or year. So if you have an enterprise agreement that expires and then it goes to, let's say you've got a unionized workforce, so it goes back into negotiations, it's now expired, it's 6 months on, it's finally agreed, it goes to Fair Work, and then they turn around and say, actually backdate this 6 months, 1 month ago, 3 months ago, whatever the date Fair Work signs off. Now, everyone knows in the payroll department, HR department, it's quite a big task to not only make those changes to the system, then to work out all the back pays associated to it. With Definitiv, you cease the old on whatever the effective date needs to be and commence the new. Regardless if it's retrospectively got to calculate itself, it's not an issue. It's all about commence and cease dates. So let's just say, for example, I'll go into the award engine. This is just a sample enterprise agreement that we've got set up for the demo today. But I'm going to pick on public holiday. This is one that everyone will understand in any type of organization or industry. So when we say, okay, well, there's a public holiday that occurs, the first thing we need to know is, well, what do we actually do with a public holiday? So from the library, we first said, pick from the library, we need to look at the day type. Now the day type in this particular rule asks you, is it a public holiday or is it not a public holiday? It then moves to the second question to say, is it worked or not worked, not worked, scheduled to work or not scheduled to work? So again, if you call someone in on a day they weren't scheduled and it happens to be a public holiday, you might have to pay that particular employee double time. But if they were already scheduled on a public holiday, you might pay only still the base rate. So again, you can start seeing the pattern that Definitiv is always right or it's always wrong. Once it passes those simple two conditions, it's a public holiday and it's worked, the next question is it part of the holiday, start or ending, starting, or majority of the time? So if you're an organization that has night shift employees and you start on a Friday but finish on a Saturday, the system needs to know, well, what is it? A Friday shift, a Saturday shift, split it as two different shifts, or part of the shift? Again, the system needs to know what these rules are to know how to treat payment. If I said, oh, Roy, this is only applicable to people in Queensland, again, I can just simply add a rule in. I indent this one under, and then from the library, I'm trying to do it on a location. The location is Queensland. Okay, so it's very, very easy to build these rules. You saw here, there's also rules to do with compliance. So this is where you start pulling in your HR department or your work health and safety department in with your payroll. So you become one as a collective working together. So for example, if I'm going to pay someone a first aid allowance, you first got to check, do you even have that certification or qualification to be paid that allowance? So that's how you keep all the data that has to do with your employees, contractors, volunteers, students, again, depending on what you've got in your organization. So once anything passes all the tests, it then needs to know, okay, well, I've passed the test, it's a public holiday, they've worked, and it's whether you start on that day. You've got to be in Queensland at full-time or part-time. Then I'm going to pay a multiplier of time and a half to the pay item called public holiday worked. At my normal pay rate, we could pay it at a day rate, do it at all-purpose rate, a specified specific rate, total package, or an accrued rate. So again, we've got all the combinations available depending what we're trying to do. We can also say paid up to the scheduled hours, paid up to a certain limit, 10 hours per a day, per week, per pay cycle. And you'll see in a lot, especially in construction, a lot of rules are to do with 28-day periods, 14-day periods. So it's outside a pay cycle. So you're looking at a greater period of time, especially when you've got things like what we call PIPs or severance accrual or performance incentive payments. Again, you can start looking at a date range should you need to. So that's how the award comes together, and it's all built based on the conditions, based on those individual requirements in your organisation. Now, the reason I started here is when you start looking at things like rostering, and if you're in a position where you can see cost of your roster because you've got that ability, you know, whether you're a general manager, operations manager, project manager, etc. I've got one here set up, and it was designed for the retail store, but again, same concept here. Is you have all your employees listed in your roster based on whether it's a fortnight. So I've got a fortnight on my screen at the time. You can change it to a week, to a month. And for those, say, in mining or construction, you can also go for set periods. So if you're doing shutdown kind of work, you might say, I need to see this actual roster based on a 45-day period. And you can go up to 90 days on the screen at a time. Now, under here, when you've got a roster shown, you then have different colors of the rainbows, okay? Again, once you become a client and you start looking at the product, you'll understand all the different colors, you know, whether shifts are accepted, whether they're pending approval, whether there's warnings or issues on that shift, whether someone's rejected it or there's a vacancy, someone's on a schedule and a leave. So you've got the different colors of the rainbows depending on what that shift type is. So I've got one here in orange that I'm going to open up for Mr. Hugh Jackman. And this just tells me very simple, he's assigned to work 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., a 12-hour shift in the Joondalup store, working as the role as the manager in Western Australia in these set departments, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a tab here called issues, and the color was orange, if you remember from the legend. And what that shows me is actually this employee is not compliant to actually work on this shift. So that's where the compliance module comes in. We've also got a module called what we call work restrictions. So you can set policies, and this leads more into work health and safety with fatigue management, where you might have in your enterprise agreement, or Modern Awards certainly has it, where they might not be able to exceed, say, 152 hours in a 28-day period. Or it might be they can't do less than a 3-hour shift because you're still going to pay for a 3-hour shift. So you can set what we call work restriction policies, whether it's at a day, whether it's at a week, whether it's a 28-day cycle. And again, when you do rostering, it's telling you that you're violating some of these policies in real time. But from anyone that's in the C-suite that cares about cost, it also tells you in real time what the cost of this shift is. Now, this isn't an estimate, and this comes back down to that award engine that I showed you a moment ago. So what it does, it takes this shift, it physically sticks it through the relevant award for that particular employee and that project. It then sticks it through the payroll and then spits out the real cost. So sometimes clients only like to see what we call the base expenses. So that's like ordinary time, time and a half, double time, RDOs, etc. Where I've got on my screen, I've got all my accruals as well, the real cost to deliver this shift. So there's ordinary time, there's payroll tax, there's personal leave, there's long service leave, there's super. And again, you can now start seeing the real cost to deliver this shift. So this is where the nice things come into play with the rostering. You can flip your screen, whether you want to group by jobs, you want to group by role, you want to group by location, or you want to do a combination of both of those. So you've got all that flexibility there available for you. Now, again, you can scroll through, you can see costs, you can go through, and you've got a nice, pretty rostering. I'll come back to the master records. So just jumping back to the master records setup. Everything, when you look at Definitiv, when it comes down to physically how to pay someone, will come down to that individual person's profile card. So in this particular example, Hugh Jackman was hired on the 16th of March. 14 and terminated in December 14 and then rehired again. So it's one record for the lifetime of the employee. And again, a very big thing in mining and construction where you're constantly rehiring based on project work and deliverables. Tax declarations, JobKeeper, if you've got labour hire employed in your business, you can pay obviously all that through Definitiv, and it will correctly lodge this automatically with the ATO when you run your first pay for that particular person. So again, it's all built into the software. Same with super, it's all built into the software. So for those who's used those traditional products out there in the market, you'll know that if an employee came to you and said, okay, I want to do a salary sacrifice for super, but don't start it to the 1st of May. That poor payroll person has to hold onto that piece of paper until it gets to that particular pay period, enter it in the system, and then when it needs to be cease it on that effective pay period. So they're always holding onto that piece of paper in their filing cabinet. Where for us, you give it the date that you want it to commence for, whether it's a deduction or whether it's a payment, and the system will automatically pick it up from that commence date or cease it from whatever the effective date is. This is the power of being date driven. You've got the full snapshot. So again, if you're tendering for big clients and you've got to build CVs for employees and you want to know where have they worked, what's the pay history, what's all the role history, you've got all that available at a click of your finger should you have permissions to these relevant areas in the system. So you can see this particular employee, he went from a salary to a total package, then back to a salary. He could have had a day rate, he could have been on hourly rate. Again, we cater for all the combinations you could have in a possible business. Same with jobs, you can see this particular employee can only work in these 5 jobs in the organisation. He's got actually 2 roles. So this is a big point of difference in our system. There is times in many businesses where people will be employed in multiple roles and paid different based on the duties they're doing. So you could be a trade assistant, but also step up as a team leader depending on the availability of those shifts. So you can have 2 different pay rates, 2 different roles, all in the same day with different managers. All it relies on is to make sure that employee's profile allows them to do those duties and everything else will flow naturally. For the ones that are assigning plant and equipment, this could be vehicles. It could be what I call the white collar industries where you're issuing mobile phones, laptops, tablets. Again, it doesn't mean you have to book to the asset. So you can see here, a laptop is a non-reportable asset. The forklift and the excavator, they don't require any reporting on that either. So again, you can pick and choose what assets I need to record and what assets I don't need to record for those particular individuals. If you've got organisations with contractors, casuals or part-timers, availability is quite important because it links into rostering. So again, you've got all these functionalities. It'll filter these shifts out of these people's profile cards. So again, the manager's not wasting time as they're doing shifts. You've got other things here, you know, from the pay slips, compliance records. You've got document management. So from a HR point of view, employment contracts, HR policies they've read, everything is filed automatically in the master record in the system. Custom fields is a nice one as well. So if you've got construction long service leave, that's a date-driven field. So you can create custom fields that are date-driven. So you might have been entitled to construction long service leave, but now you've been promoted into an executive team, so you're not on the tools anymore. So you're not effective for construction long service leave anymore. Common ones we definitely see is, are you an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander? If that's a reporting requirement for your organisation. Sometimes white collar or global companies require class of employees. That could be, are you an employee, team lead, management, executive? You have your own labels, your categories of how you group people together. We also have onboarding available. So for an organisation that is turning over a few employees, again, depending on the industry, you can do your full electronic onboarding through the system. You know, it'll give you a real-time snapshot. So you can see here, Eli Milan has opened his onboarding, so it's in progress. And if I open that as, say, I'm the HR manager, I can see that with Eli, he's opened this 20 days ago, 20 hours. So again, he's been idling on this for a long time. Doesn't look like he's going to join the business. So I could cancel that on board and again, give a reason, and that will notify that particular candidate that your onboarding has been cancelled. This is where they'll sign their contracts, fill out their tax details, fill out their banking, and everything can be done from the mobile as well. It doesn't have to be done from a laptop or a main computer. Okay, so it's all available to you. Now, moving into reporting, and I'm conscious of the time that we have today, is reporting. It's really simple, really easy to use should you have the permissions to these areas. So here's a simple one. As of today, I want to know what employees do I have currently employed in this organisation. HR might come along, or the board might come along and say, actually, what is the gender diversity? So I can simply lift up gender, and I can see as of today, I've got 68 females and 36 males employed in the organisation. If anyone's used Excel before, it's exactly the same concept. You've got your simple auto filters. I only want to see females. I only want to see males, etc. So very, very simple auto filters. And you can also take fields off the report by simply dragging them off the report itself, okay? So then the nice thing is if you went, oh, I made a mistake, I need to put the title back of that employee, it's a simple drop drag to put it back on. You could save that and you could call it Beck's report. And again, what it will do, it will remember all the filters, all the columns you've left, and automatically put it back into the format that you require. Very handy, and you can share that with your other colleagues, again, should they have permission to these areas. Of course, to all those people that love Microsoft Excel, you've got the export button here, and you can just export that out into Microsoft Excel. Now, for those who are not good with Excel and is running those reports here, you can also go to dynamic mode, and it's like pivot tables online, but a simplified version for it. So again, I saved one here before called genders report by state, by employment status, and you can see I have 104 people employed as of today. Now, if I only operate in one state, that's going to be pretty relevant to have location there. Simple, drop it out, and again, you can see your nice, pretty graph and data as of today. Now, you might turn around and say, okay, well, I want to see, have we grown or have we retracted in employee size? So let's rewind the time and say, let's show me what the business looked like June 30th, 2019. Hit refresh, and I had 115 people at that point in time, 77 females, 38 males. Again, being date driven, you know what it looks like point in time. And anyone in management always wants to look good with a graph and a chart. It's that easy to automatically turn this to a graphical representation. For the bean counters in the room, the payroll reporting is the one that makes them most excited. So rather than being stuck in a pay cycle, whether it's weekly, fortnightly, or monthly, you have the ultimate control to say, in this date range is what I want to see costs for. So I'm going to run it from the 22nd of March. That was my last pay that I ran in this demo instance. And this was all the costs and liabilities the business incurred. So I'm going to grab pay item here and lift it up and group all the costs and liabilities by those categories. So now I'm scrolling through. So let's pretend I'm a CFO and I'm looking at why or who got paid Sunday penalty. I could open that job up, that pay item up, sorry. I can see who the employees was, the employment status. I'll be probably questioning why a volunteer is getting paid. I can also see the physical date that they worked, the day of the week, whether it was an expense, on cost or liability, the units, the rate, the GL code, the role they were doing, the project they were working on, the location, department, and work order, and even what pay period was actually paid in, because your cost to date could be very different to your pay period dates. So again, I can do a lot of my analysis on screen and sum it up without dumping it to Excel. Or, I can have nice, pretty dashboards for my, say, project managers to say, here's all your jobs, here's all the costs that hit you by day of the week. Everything you guys see today has what we call an API behind it. So you can integrate to any part of our product into other solutions. So what I've shown you, if you've already got a rostering system that you're happy with, you can integrate it into Definitiv, should there be a purpose or a need to do that. Okay, so again, we don't have to be the king for everything. You've got that flexibility. Depending on what your ERP is at that point in time, whether it's MyOb Advance, MyOb Account Right, it could be a Xero, it could be whatever it needs to be, the format will be matched exactly the requirements your organization has. So in this particular demo instance, this one was set up for Sage Intacct. And what would happen is when I finished running my pays, I would come in here, I'll pick the pay run I've just run, hit export, and then I'll jump into my ERP and I'll browse and I'll import that into my ERP. That's how easy it is to do your full P&L and balance sheet costing back into your systems. All right, to show you how quick and easy it is to run a pay run, you'll simply come into payroll, and this is assuming all your timesheets and leave requests has been approved, because that's what it's going to pick up as part of that transaction. So all the payroll person would need to do is they'll come in here, they'll pick the pay calendar. If they've only got one, it will automatically pre-select it. If they've got multiple in the organization, it will show you all the different categories you've got, or pay calendars. In my example, I'm a bit in the future, so my next pay cycle is the 5th of April to the 18th of April. Payment date, I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to be paying that on the 19th of April, and I'm going to pay the super on the 30th of April. And I would simply go start a pay run. Now, what it will do, that 115 employees I had will come through the screen, and all the payroll person would do is highlight everyone and simply hit calculate. If you've got an organization, let's call it roughly around 1,000 employees, 6 awards, including enterprise agreements, the system takes roughly about 1.5 minutes to calculate all your back pays, your wages for that particular period, including anything retrospectively. So if you have that 1,000 employees, make a quick cup of coffee, come back, and your payroll is basically ready to enter any non-time and attendance entries. So non-time and attendance entries, if you're not aware, is things like bonuses, commissions, terminations, expense claims. They would probably be my big 4 that I would say would require either still manual entry, or you can import from Excel should it be coming from another system. So again, that's how easy it is to do it. Now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say this Rogers guy, he's going to get a bonus. So I'll simply open up his record, and this will tell me straight away on screen, what is he getting paid already. So I can see here, there's some accruals coming through, there's some long service leave movement, there's 2 deductions coming off his pay, there's super, and he's only getting 76.5 hours worth of ordinary time paid to him and 8.5 of public holiday not worked. Now, if I wanted to go, well, how did it get to the 76 hours? I could just click on the details tab, and very similar to our reporting engine, this will tell me all the pay components and liabilities the employee is getting. So if I open up ordinary time, it said, okay, on the 6th of April, he's getting 8.5 hours, 7th, 8th, 9th, etc. It's then using the Enrolled Nurses Award. It's using Rule 1.1.1.1, and it's using his normal pay policy on his master record. So again, it gives you that reconciliation. So if you need to troubleshoot anything, it's very simple to work out what the root cause of the problem potentially can be. But in my case, very simple. I just want to pay the guy a bonus. So as a payroll person, I'll come in here. I'll say, I'm paying you a bonus. It's your annual bonus. And by selecting the taxable period, we'll determine how it taxes it automatically for you. So lucky luck, $5,000. And we're going to say, well done on a great year. This message will now go on its payslip, and it also goes onto your report so you can see what this payment relates to. You simply hit save. Now Definitiv will work out, hang on, there's payroll tax on this, there's super on this, and it recalculates that particular employee to ensure that all the payments or on costs is automatically attracted to that relevant item. And voila, away it goes. Now I move on and I start checking my normal reports like you would in any payroll system and make sure you're comfortable with what you're about to pay. I've got 3 alerts here. One's hitting a super cap, and there's also Hugh Jackman's not compliant to work on the forklift, but he's trying to book time to the forklift. So it gives me those little messages. There are only warnings, issues you would have to fix up. Now, what I'll do here is I'll simply verify that pay. So I'm saying I'm ready to close it off and I want to pay it to bank. I would load that bank file into the whatever it is, CommBank, ANZ, whatever your bank is. And then I'm going to go publish and lodge. This is your declaration to the ATO, doing all your STP pay events. And this also does any tax declarations that you need to lodge to the ATO. And it does it automatically in the one click of the button. And then when the ATO receives that file, it'll give us a signal, either they've accepted it, rejected it, or there's a comment. And we will display that message for that payroll user or the accountant so they can then see and address that message should they need it. So that's how easy it is to do a pay run. Now, when you want to pay super, same thing is you'll start a batch, you pick the pay runs that you want to pay. Now, in most cases, you only have those 3 categories. I've got a few extra because of my demo. It will grab all the pay runs in that particular period, all the super funds. And in this particular case, it's going to tell me I'm about to pay $18,159 out the door. If I'm happy and it reconciles to my general ledger, reconciles to my super reports, I simply just hit submit. This will validate all the data it does basically what we call a pre-check to make sure the data is looking good. In my case, I've got 18 warnings and it's just fake tax file numbers. That's okay because it's a demo database. If there was errors, it'll be in red and then you would have to fix what the issues are, okay? And that button will say resubmit if there was errors. In my case, I don't have errors. I'm paying $18,159.34 out the door. Simply hit approve, and that will go off and direct debit my bank account. Definitiv will then be notified when the direct debit has occurred, when the direct debit has been cleared by bank, when it's gone, the money has now been sent to the gateway, including the data. So all responses to do with super is automatically facilitated back into Definitiv, and then we send you an email to tell you what's going on, or you can come into the notification tab to see what the messages are. So you can see the different statuses. That's a very high level of Definitiv in itself. Now, what I'm going to try to do is connect to my phone just to quickly show you what some of the phone functionality is on the mobile apps. And we're just going to bounce. Hopefully this all works. Haven't done this on GoToMeeting for a while, so let me see if it works.
Fingers crossed.
Maybe getting error messages. This is not liking it. Come on. There we go. That's my phone displaying now. Now we've got two apps that's available to all employees, all employees and businesses, depending on your responsibilities that again you need in your organization. So the time clock one is probably the one that won't be on people's personal phones. 99% of the time that's built and put onto, say, an iPad. So let's say you're in a construction site and they've got to blow on the breathalyzer to walk through the gate. Usually there's an iPad or an Android tablet. And what happens then is this particular tablet will be sitting there like that. And all the employee will do is simply tap, and then they'll clock in for their day, okay? All that's doing is checking, are you rostered to work today? If you're not, it will send it off for approval. If you are, automatically approves the timesheet if it's within the grace periods. The technology we use for what we call tap and go is NFC. And if you're not familiar with that, I'm in Sydney at the moment. The public transport here in Sydney is Opal. So the Opal cards. In Perth, we've got Smart Riders. Most new buildings will have NFC for their security doors or car parks. It can be tokens. In construction, a lot of the time our clients buy stickers. So you could just stick that on their hard hat, on their safety details, on their cards, whatever it's applicable to your organization. So that's a simple way to clock in and clock out people. Also, if they forget what we call the token to clock in, they can punch in their employee number manually, but the difference they do is the camera will activate itself now. So you can see that's just sitting up there looking at the roof. If I put my face in the camera now, it goes green, and then now it lets me clock in for the day. This will take this timesheet now with my photo and send it to the manager to make sure that is Hugh Jackman actually clocking in. In my example, when I clock in as Mr. Hugh, he's got to pick what store he's working on. So in some of your business's case, that could be your job that you're working on at that point in time. He's also got two roles. So he's going to say, I'm working as the manager. And again, he starts his day. So you see how the screens would change to suit the different employee based on their requirements. So that's what we call the traditional time clock. It also works in offline mode automatically. So if you're in remote locations with poor connectivity to internet, it works perfectly fine. As soon as it gets comms, it remits it back up, all the data. The one with 13, this is all about the particular employee and manager themselves. So this is the one that, generally speaking, they always have on their phone because it's all about themselves or their manager. Today, I'm actually logged in as myself, okay? So you can see 6 hours and 5 minutes ago, I logged in and started my day. In my business, all my staff clock in and clock out, self-included. That's not how we pay. I think all of my staff will say they wish they got paid for the hours they work. We're all salaried employees. So if you're doing your annualized boots test, we've got all the data of the real hours people have worked to allow us to do those calculations at the end of each year. But also, most important of the reason we use the data for is for two purposes. We're worried about burning out our staff and making sure they're not doing silly hours. And also we use that data to work out what resources do we need to deal with the workloads that we currently have and we will potentially have in the following months. So for example, if my projects team is doing 200 hours worth of overtime as a team, that tells me straight away to my board and myself that that's at least one FTE just to get it back to a break-even point. Now, the clock in, clock out, if you've got a remote workforce, can all be done from the personal phones. You can see here, I clocked in the hotel this morning at 7:35. Today, right now, I'm going to change my job and say I'm booking to sales. So now all my wages, super, payroll tax is now charged to the sales department, and you can see it pinged my GPS location of where I've just done that clock event. So again, depending on your organization, might be something you'll use, you might not use it, you might only use it for some of your employees. I've got my leave history, I've got my roster, so if I wanted to know what am I doing tomorrow, I'm still doing the same job. It's a bit of a groundhog day. What's it going to look like Monday in 4 days' time? Same thing. If I was getting rostered on jobs, I will see the different jobs and I'll have either an accept or reject button on those shifts should I be one of those rostered type employees. As a manager, what I find quite handy is if I needed to call any one of my staff. So let's just say, let's pretend Tanya hasn't come to work. I can click on her name and my permissions allows me to access her compliance records, her emergency contacts, her info, accruals, or documents. Simple request I want to do is call her. She hasn't come to work. I want to call her. I tap on her phone number and I call her straight away. That's the beauty about being an integrated app and giving power to your managers to be able to do the basics data on the fly. So rather than getting a laptop out or a tablet out, they can just access it from their pockets. Same again, I've got 12 approvals. You can see here on the 17th of March, Tanya, our GM, did it, what was that, 11, almost a 12-hour day. Now, if I think she's a bit of a dodgy character, I could open that up and I can see she worked from home yesterday. She clocked in at 6:22 and she clocked out at 6 o'clock at night. And again, if I was a bit nosy, I could drill down into the GPS of each one of those coordinates of where she clocked in. And you can see she booked all the time to admin. So again, I can do bulk approvals if I need to. I've got to approve my own timesheet. How lucky am I? And again, I can see here, there's a particular issue with this timesheet. So it's told me that this employee has edited something on their timesheet. In this particular case, this employee's realized when he's gone to clock off for the day, he actually hasn't even clocked on for the morning. So he's had to correct his timesheet to say, I actually started my day at 9:30 and it records it for me because I can go, oh, no, I don't believe it was 9:30. It's closer to 10:30 and I could always override that timesheet should I need to. But from an audit purpose, again, I've got the full history and transaction history, so you can't hide from it. You can see again with him, he's booked to R&D, and again, he's booked it to what another level called requirements and gathering and analysis. So again, depending on different people's roles, we'll have different bookings. So I'm going to probably leave it there. There's a lot in the app that you can access. You know, employees can update their own banking, get their own pay slips, all that kind of stuff. Update company policies, sign. You can see here, we've got a data breach policy that I signed for that policy on the 27th of October. And again, I've clicked on it and I can get a copy of that policy of what I've signed, et cetera, et cetera. So it's one of those things is, you know, it's all about protecting the business. If you're in that C-suite or in that directorship position in the organization, it's making sure that you're not in those vulnerable positions of whether it's underpayment, fatigue management, or not being compliant. And again, if you're in the operational side of things, it's the technology stack that makes it super user-friendly. You know, we always say to our clients, you don't need to have training to use our app, okay? It's just like internet banking. You only see the permissions that you've been given, and it should just be intuitive enough that you know how to use it. And you can see here, as soon as I stick my face in, it lets me straight in. I don't have to sign in with any fancy passwords or anything like that. Once I've accredited, done my authentication, it will automatically let me into my app. All right, Lauren, back to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Roy. Does anyone have any questions that they want to run past while we've got Roy online? No, everyone's blown away. I will be sending out this recording when I've finished, and if you guys have got any questions, please send me an email or someone here at Thrive. But yeah, thanks for coming, and I hope Definitiv is going to help your business, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everyone.